Hi, my friends, and welcome back to another edition of Facebook Live Thursday. I guess I'm a little punchy this morning. I've been up super early, so I feel like even though it's only 10 o'clock my time, I feel like it's, like midnight already tonight. So today we are talking about boundaries and imposter syndrome. So if you are not familiar with imposter syndrome, first of all, what I'll say is that I was doing some research and looking at, statistics and things, and at least 70% of us, and that's a high percent, at least 70% of us feel like an imposter in our lives at some point. So if you're not familiar with the concept of imposter syndrome, it refers to the phenomenon when an individual internalizes their accomplishments due to the fear of being exposed as a fraud. So no matter how accomplished you might be, or how much praise you've received for who you are and what you accomplish, what you do, you still end up feeling like a fake or a fraud. And those with imposter syndrome are essentially psychologically uncomfortable with acknowledging their role in their own success. So their negative thoughts run rampant, especially worrying about what would happen if other people knew the truth about them. So there's this feeling like, because they feel the fear of exposure, there's this sort of hiding and not wanting to actually be found out. And so those of us who have been dealing with perfectionism, those of us who are overachievers, likely know what it's like to feel in the grips of imposter syndrome. So if this is something that is resonating with you, I would love to go into a conversation here around the ways that we can, really the symptoms of imposter syndrome, and then the ways in which we can overcome imposter syndrome and how boundaries can help us do that. So if you're new to me, my name is Nancy Levin. I am a master coach and best-selling author. My latest book is called Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free. And in fact, I'm going to pop this right here into the comments. My latest book is available on ebook for just $1.99. So it's absolutely available in hardcover and audiobook as well. But if you are someone who likes ebooks, $1.99 is a pretty great deal. And I am here to support overachieving people pleasers, make yourself a priority, and set boundaries that stick. So I'm just going to say a quick hello to some peeps. Hi there, Dale, and hi, Barbara. Hi, Rhonda and Teresa. Hey, hello, sweet Pat. Hi, Kathy. And hey, Heather. Hi, Janice. Good morning. Hey, sweet Paul. Hi, Rhonda. And hey, Patricia. Nice to see you here. So again, if you're just tuning in, we are exploring how boundaries can support you in overcoming imposter syndrome. And as I was saying earlier, at least 70% of us feel like an imposter at some point in our lives. And imposter syndrome is specifically referring to the phenomenon of feeling like a fraud, feeling like a fake. We internalize our accomplishments. We are in fear of being exposed. And no matter how accomplished we are, no matter what we do, no matter how much praise we receive, we still feel like a fake or a fraud. And so the truth of the matter is that these feelings of unworthiness, because that's really what's at the foundation of imposter syndrome, this feeling of unworthiness, the feeling of not enoughness. And then, especially for those of us who've been perfectionists or overachievers, the feeling and the need for the overcompensation. So these feelings of unworthiness can really happen to anyone, anywhere. And while imposter syndrome is especially prevalent in the workplace or for entrepreneurs around work, imposter syndrome isn't limited to professional life. It can really impact your personal life as well. So as I'm sharing a bit about this, I want you to just take sort of a little inventory in your own world and see if any of these ring true for you. Because some of the instances where it might occur in your personal life can include, feeling inadequate in a relationship or with a partner, or an incapacity to accept personal praise, or an incapacity to actually celebrate your own wins. And then that sort of knee-jerk need to go overboard on your challenging and often super, even overly ambitious goals. So again, it's this aspect of proving and earning your worth, and yet no matter how hard you try to prove or earn, you still don't feel worthy, and therefore feel like an imposter, feel like a fraud, feel like a fake, and then spend a lot of energy expended around what will happen when people find out that I'm not as smart as they think I am, or I'm not as talented as they think I am, or that I'm not as smart or talented as I'm presenting. Because what's really happening here is we're having to look at the persona of what we are putting out into the world. Are we, as I did for decades, are we projecting this image of perfection to the world? Are we managing the perception of others by giving them a very specific lens to see us through? And what I can tell you from my own experience is that is exhausting. And then we're always living in that fear of being found out. And what's really at the core of this is that there's nothing to be found out about. So I'm going to take another moment here to say hi. Hey, Rhonda, Patricia. Hi, Ageless Deborah. Hello, David Kessler. Hey, Tamara. I'm glad you're here. Hi, Naomi. Hey, John. Hey, Jan from Canada. Carla. Hi, Debbie from Calgary. We got some Canada in the house. Hey, Naomi and Lisa and Carla and Alyssa and Marlene. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I see Reenie's here too. Hey, sweet Reenie. So, when we're looking at imposter syndrome, some of the symptoms, and, the symptoms can look different for different people, but there are some consistent telltale red flags when we're sort of hiding what we think we need to hide because we're afraid we're going to be found out as fake or fraud. So some of the symptoms include an extreme lack of self-confidence and feelings of inadequacy and consistent and constant comparison to other people, anxiety and self-doubt, distrust in one's own intuition and capabilities. So second guessing your own talents, second guessing your own skills, negative self-talk, and this is a big one, and we'll explore this in a moment even more deeply. And then also something that can really be a symptom of imposter syndrome is dwelling on the past and irrational fears about the future. Because when we're in the past and when we're in the future, where are we not? We are not in the present moment. So we're in worry, or we're in fear, or we're in obsession. And all of that takes us out of being able to be in the present moment, takes us out of actually being able to be in our truth, in our authenticity in the moment. So let's see, I want to see, David, thank you. Carla, oh, I miss you too. Hi, Elizabeth. Nice to see you here too. And hey, Heather. Yep, Canada, Ottawa. And Carmela's in Winnipeg. I love it. There's a lot of Canada in the house today. It's so fun. I love it. So listen, we all feel some of these things from time to time. Of course, we're human. And as I've often said before, my humanity is my least favorite quality about myself, my humanness. But we all feel these things. What we're looking at is there sort of an extreme. Has the pendulum swung so far that you're living in this constant space of comparison or of lacking the self-confidence or of distrust in your own skills and abilities? And I want you to just take a moment and see where you might notice in your own life that your imposter syndrome rears its head. It might be in relationship. It might be at work. It might be with friends. There might be other scenarios where this imposter syndrome is showing up for you. And if you want to share in the chat, in the comments here, you're more than welcome to. Let's see, Naomi, I used to struggle with this so much, it was crippling. Reading Worthy multiple times helped me with this. I embrace myself so much more today, and it's quite a relief. Beautiful. And yes, this is really part of the antidote to imposter syndrome, is being able to be with your own value and worth, not allowing someone else outside of you to be the determiner of your worth. So I often talk about this in terms of, the way we put our value and worth in the hands of others, the way we hitch our worthiness to someone else's wagon. And it's very precarious because we're actually giving someone else the power. And then we spend our lives trying to earn and prove our worth. So part of this too is looking at the ways in which you currently try to earn and prove your worth and your value. How are you trying to earn and prove it? And how are you, so I'm going to say it this way. For many years, decades, I found my worth in my achievements and my accomplishments. In fact, I was only worthy if I was doing. And so my imposter syndrome really reared its head of, I had to be in this overachiever mode. I had to be overgiving, overdoing, overcompensating for what I lacked as simply being a human being. So I went into overdrive. And so you might want to also start looking at what are the ways, how do you determine your own value and worth? Are you worthy if you're productive? Are you worthy if you accomplish things? Are you worthy only if you finish your to-do list for the day? Are you worthy only if you get that promotion? Whatever it might be, start seeing the way that you've sort of tricked yourself into, if this happens or if I do this, then I feel worthy, then I feel of value. Wendy, our humanity binds us closer than any perfection. Exactly. Hey, Kimberly. Carla, imposter syndrome appears when I have professional jobs as a CFO. Carla, I need to go back and do the Worthy course again. Yes. And Heather saying, is imposter syndrome just another way to hide from yourself? It absolutely is. So like I was saying earlier, it's when we are actually internalizing our accomplishments or we don't want to celebrate ourselves in some way. It's the way that we're feeling stuck. We're holding ourselves back. You've heard me talk before about the ways in which we think we have to hide some part of ourselves in order to be loved and accepted. We all have something we think we need to hide, some aspect of ourselves or some quality we possess. And so we spend a lot of energy putting on the mask, putting on the cape, putting on the armor, so no one will see the truth. No one will see what's inside or behind. And yet in the next breath, we're always talking about wanting to be loved for the truth of who we are. So we can't be loved for the truth of who we are unless we're willing to reveal the truth of who we are. So you can see that these things are happening in a discrepancy. So the idea is we want to come out from hiding And we want to come into full acceptance of who we are, full acceptance of our light, full acceptance of our brilliance, full acceptance of our gifts, and let ourselves shine in this way. And then we are standing in the truth of our revealing. So again, when we are able to reveal the truth of who we are, no matter how vulnerable it might feel, it's the only way, it's the gateway to intimacy. When my vulnerability can meet yours in that sweet spot, that is true connection. And I hear time and time again about, this mass loneliness that is sweeping. And so much of that is because we are in relationships where we're still hiding. We're in relationships where we're still not revealing our truth. And so the way boundaries come in here is, first and foremost, at their core, boundaries are about discovering your own truth and then acting and making choices in alignment with your truth. So, I called this book Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free, because I believe that, among many other things, but at its core, freedom is revealing my truth without fear, being able to fully stand in my truth without fear. And so boundaries are the bridge to that freedom, because when we're standing in our truth and able to express from the truth of who we are without fear, we move into freedom on our own, and we move into freedom in our relationships. Janice, I'm in Canada as well. I've had to move from one province to another, which took my registration away. I constantly feel like I have to prove myself. I don't have 3 years to go back to school for something I know well. What to do in a situation like this? I'm not 100% sure I completely understand what you're asking, but you say that you feel like you're needing to prove that you need to prove it to yourself over and over again. But I'm not quite. Maybe you could elaborate on this, because I'm not quite sure what you're saying. Rhonda, yes, you're resonating. Deborah, my desires are not just possible but probable. Marlene, I'm only worthy when I'm getting it right, no mistakes. Yes. Rini, yes, so beautiful, all of this. And hi, Linda. Right, so you want to start seeing the way that you are sort of judging yourself, the way that you're grading yourself, the way that you're holding yourself hostage, which is very different than holding yourself accountable. So in terms of being able to move through this, and listen, while imposter syndrome may still lurk around inside from time to time, there are ways in which your own unique brilliance can come forth, that you can actually give yourself permission to allow your unique brilliance to come forth and live in your light. And it begins with boundaries. So I want to explore here how setting boundaries that stick will support you to silence those negative spiraling thoughts that swirl through your head, so that you can actually connect back with who you are, valued and worthy, and not an imposter at all. And this comes at first to this idea that I've talked about before, if you've tuned in before, about our beliefs. So most of us believe that our beliefs are facts. However, our beliefs are not facts, and they're far from it. Our beliefs are simply long-held ideas about the way the world works and our role within it. So we have to first start checking our beliefs, and we have to always come back to truth-telling. We have to be able to separate out fact from fiction. We have to question ourselves, as my dear Louise Hay would always say, are you thinking thoughts that scare you? We have to actually ask ourselves this. Am I thinking the thoughts that scare me? Am I thinking the thoughts that hold me back? We can change our thoughts. We can change our beliefs. And we can do this by getting clear on the beliefs that we're thinking that are holding us back. We can access a time in our lives when this belief was actually proven untrue in any context at all. So you want to find a time when there's past proof that this belief was proven untrue. And then we can go on to actually identify a new belief that will serve us and support us. And then an action step to take to move us in that direction. So I'm always about action. And I have what I call my transformation equation. Change equals vision plus choice plus action. So we have the vision of where we want to be, we have the choices that we're making, and we have the actions that we're taking. I'm going to take a moment here. Let's see. Heidi, I keep giving my power to others, not believing in myself. Yes. Maureen, I had to leave a few behind permanently. They disrespected and abused my boundaries. Okay. Yes. So it seems like you're saying you had to leave some people behind. Michelle, I used to feel validated only if I had tons of friends and was popular, but recently lost most of my friends. I was at first devastated, but recently I'm feeling free of having to impress everyone and of the constant gossip and drama. Yes, learning who I really am inside, not being an imposter to impress friends. Yes. So Janice, beautiful. Thank you. Olivia, I judge myself for staying stuck in my comfort zone and not stepping out. Yes. Heather, love the transformation equation. We need shirts. We do. Tamara, how do we hold ourselves accountable? What does that involve? Excellent. So boundaries are about accountability. Your boundaries will always begin and end with you. So the first thing I'll say about boundaries here are your boundaries are the limits you set around what you will or will not do, will or will not accept, will or will not tolerate. So ultimately getting clear on the baseline of what is okay and what is not okay. The biggest myth about boundaries is that it's up to anyone else to uphold or honor or respect your boundaries. It is up to you. So this comes down to the promise and commitment you make with yourself. This comes down to holding yourself accountable to what you say you will do to honor yourself when your boundaries are being crossed. And when your boundaries are being crossed, it's you who is crossing them. So we love to point the finger. We love to blame someone else. We love to say, he or she is crossing my boundaries. It's not true. We are the ones who cross our own boundaries. We are the ones who allow others and enable others to cross them. So it's still up to us to ultimately uphold them. So the way we do this, Tamara, is getting really clear on our non-negotiables, getting really clear on the ways in which we are willing to stick to a promise we make to ourselves. We want to ultimately show up in a way that we trust ourselves to take good care of ourselves. The invitation here is, are you willing to consider yourself as much as, and ultimately more, as you're considering everyone else? Let's see. Hi, Trace. Nice to see you here. Deborah, right. We aren't responsible for others' actions, reactions, emotions, or choices. So I always say someone else's response to my truth is not my responsibility to manage. And Olivia, yes, honor yourself. So when we are looking at imposter syndrome, what's really happening is that we are other referenced. We are so caught up in what everyone out there thinks of us that we've lost sight of who we are, what our skills are, what our talents are, what we want, the energy from which we create from, and that's what I want you to return to. So we can get out of hiding behind the mask, behind the cape, behind the armor, and we can actually stand in the freedom of who we are authentically, unafraid of what other people will think. Now, when we're doing this, we have to be willing to set certain boundaries so that we feel safe. Boundaries around self-care, boundaries perhaps around our own wellness and growth, boundaries around interactions, boundaries in our relationships, so that we're not constantly subjecting ourselves any longer to what isn't okay, to what doesn't feel good. Because many times we feel like an imposter, or we're in the imposter syndrome grip when we are in this comparison to other people, when we're in some way trying to measure up, again, with the earning and the proving. So we want to actually look at, how do we need to limit? What are the limits we need to put on certain relationships, for example, certain elements of time or space? What are the limits we need to put around certain communications? It might be a limit around social media, especially if comparison is something that's big for you. Hi, Sally. Nice to see you here. And Heather, yes, so difficult to connect with yourself if you're playing a role. And so that is really, that's really the piece of it. We end up putting this persona out in the world. We end up playing these roles in our life, and then we're living an uninhabited life. We're living a life where we are more concerned with everyone else having what they need, and more concerned with what everyone else thinks, instead of concerning ourselves with us. So this is about being able to embrace your success, being able to celebrate your wins, taking ownership of what's yours, stepping powerfully into visibility and owning your brilliance and living in your light. Constantly and consistently checking in around your own self-care. And again, setting boundaries in such a way that you are not only looking at what you want to keep out, but what you want to carefully choose and consciously curate to bring into your life. So, thank you for joining me here today for our conversation about boundaries and imposter syndrome. I'm popping in the comments again one more time. My latest book is called Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free. The ebook is just $1.99 right now, and it's a great deal if you want to check it out. And I'm here every Thursday at 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern, live for about a half an hour, talking about boundaries and all different topics. And I love when you join me. Yes. Olivia, this is a great question. Is there one basic boundary that maybe everyone could start with? So boundaries are different for different people, but a boundary that I know across the board everyone can use some support with is saying no. So I have all of my clients go through this exercise of, if you are being asked something directly in the moment, if there's a direct request coming in and you can say no right away, say no. If you can't say no, simply let the person know that you'll get back to them tomorrow. You want to build in some space to consider yourself first. So this is the first basic tenet of boundary setting. Put yourself first. And really look at, what is your impulse around saying yes? If your impulse is around responsibility, obligation, wanting to look like the hero or the rescuer, wanting to look like Superwoman, not wanting someone else to be disappointed or angry or upset. If your yes is coming from any of those, wanting to be liked, if your yes is coming from any of those, it's actually a no. Yes is about desire. So if it's not about desire, it's a no. That is the first place to begin. And begin giving yourself some space to explore your own yeses and your nos. You're going to have to find your no to free your true yes. Let's see. You're welcome, Barbara. Janice, I'm glad this was helpful. Wendy, for me, this is a form of being in integrity. Exactly. Naomi, bye, honey. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Rini. Thank you, Pat. Bye, Anna. Bye, Olivia. All right, so thanks for being here. And once again, as I said, I'm here every Thursday live on Facebook at 9 o'clock Pacific and 12 o'clock Eastern. And I've got lots of goodies coming up soon. So stay tuned. All right, bye.